My head was splitting as if it had cracked open. When I woke up, only the nightstand lamp was on in the bedroom. Its orange light fell on the empty walk-in closet. That haute couture dress was not there. The dress I had prepared for tonight's Vance Corporation charity gala. A long champagne-colored dress embroidered with tiny diamonds. It took 3 months to arrive from Paris, but now it was gone, along with my diamond earrings, my wedding ring, and the gold-plated invitation. Everything vanished without a trace. I leaned against the edge of the bed, trying to sit up, but my body felt soft, as if all its bones had been removed. The back of my head was slightly numb, and there was a strange bitter taste in my mouth. "Ma'am, are you awake?" Our housekeeper, Martha, walked into the room with a glass of warm water in her hands. Her face looked anxious. "What time is it?" I asked. "Almost 8. Martha handed me the water. Her fingers were trembling. "Miss Anna, she put on your dress and left with Mr. Vance." My hand gripping the glass tightened. "She said you were feeling unwell and asked her to go in your place." Martha's voice grew quieter. "Mr. Vance didn't even ask anything, he just put her in the car." I suddenly remembered the last moment before I lost consciousness. Sarah walked in with a cup of supposedly healing herbal tea, smiling tenderly and caringly. "Anna, you look so pale," she said. "Drink this and rest a little." And I believed her. No, rather, I never thought she would dare do something like this so openly. Sarah had been in our house for 2 years. A younger girl from my NYU sorority. A couple of years ago, her career hit a dead end, she barely made ends meet and begged me to help her find a job. I took pity on her and got her a position as an administrator at the corporation. Then she became Andrew's personal assistant. And then she started wearing the clothes I bought, using my perfume, and appearing arm in arm with my husband at various high society events in New York. Everyone around knew what kind of relationship they had. Only I continued to cling to this long-rotten marriage. "Ma'am, please do not be angry," Martha said cautiously. "The young master came by just now. He left something on the nightstand." I looked down. There was a note on the nightstand. David's handwriting. Sharp, confident, not at all like an 18-year-old boy's. "Mom, do not be afraid. The show is just beginning." In the corner, a small chess motif was drawn. Queen takes king. I stared at these lines for a long time. David was not like other children. From the age of 13, he sat in Andrew's office during all board meetings. At 15, he wrote his first ever business plan. At 17, he had already made his first $1 million on the stock market. Andrew never knew what kind of dragon he had raised. He was only interested in the company, cold numbers, and profit. Stopping by the house, he only briefly glanced at his son, asked a few words about his studies, and continued exchanging disgusting text messages with Sarah. He did not understand David, he never did. My phone vibrated. David sent a link. I tapped it, and the screen lit up. A live broadcast of the Vance Corporation charity gala. The camera was just panning across the entrance to the banquet hall. And then I saw Andrew. He wore a charcoal gray suit that accentuated his broad shoulders and stately figure. His face was cold, with his usual detached smile on his lips, and Sarah held his arm. She was wearing my dress. The champagne-colored train flowed across the floor. The diamond jewelry shone dazzlingly in the spotlight. That was my wedding ring and my grandmother's emerald bracelet. A family heirloom. Sarah held her chin high, smiling like she owned the place. She nodded to every guest who approached them. "Mrs. Vance has arrived. Mrs. Vance, you look irresistible tonight. Mr. Vance and his wife are a beautiful couple." I heard these flattering voices, and every word pierced my heart like a knife. Andrew did not correct anyone. He even leaned toward Sarah, whispering something in her ear, making her cover her mouth with her hand and laugh coquettishly. Her eyes shone with triumph. "Mom, are you okay?" David's voice came from the door. I looked up and saw him leaning against the doorframe. He wore a simple white button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, revealing the lean, sinewy arms of a teenager. In his hands, he held a tablet, the screen continuously flashing with numbers. "Why did you not go?" I asked. "Why watch this woman embarrass herself?" David raised an eyebrow, walked over to the bed, and sat next to me. He handed me the tablet. "Mom, take a look." On the screen was an encrypted folder. Inside were neatly sorted files, photos, videos, and bank transfer records. I opened one and froze. These were photos of Sarah with a strange man in a hotel. The date was last month. I opened another. It was a bank statement showing a secret transfer of $50,000 from Andrew's account. The money went to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I opened a third. An audio recording of her phone conversation with a private investigator. She was asking how to make a middle-aged woman disappear quietly and go unnoticed. A chill ran down my spine. "Where did you get all this?" I asked. David smiled. The smile was soft, but deep in his eyes, I saw an icy gleam. "Mom, I told you. I am a chess player." He took the tablet back. Their moves were visible to me from the very beginning. I was just waiting. Waiting for what? For them to walk into a dead end themselves. David stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the Manhattan skyline. "Mom, for these 2 years I watched you endure, yield, and swallow all the insults. I did nothing because I knew you were not ready yet." He turned and looked at me. His eyes held a maturity and determination unnatural for his age. "Tell me, are you ready now?" I looked at the screen with the live broadcast. Sarah stood in the center of the hall, holding Andrew's arm. She raised a glass of champagne toward the cameras. Her face shone with happiness, while I lay here, in a house that once belonged to me, drugged with sleeping pills. Stripped of my dress, my place, turned into a laughingstock. 2 years. For 2 years I told myself. For the sake of my son, for the sake of the family, I just need to endure a little longer. But now I finally understood. Some things cannot be brought back by patience. I am ready. My voice was quiet but firm. David smiled. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. He said just 3 words into the receiver. "We can begin." Hanging up, he offered me his hand. "Mom, get up. Change your clothes. Tonight, we, mother and son, must play this performance to the end." On the broadcast screen, the lights in the hall dimmed. A single spotlight hit the stage. The host walked out and, with a smile, announced the start of the charity auction. And I knew that from this moment on, everything would be different. The 18-year-old writer. When David said, "We can begin," I did not yet know what those words meant. He helped me up from the bed. Martha brought a bowl of hot chicken broth. I ate a few spoonfuls, and my strength gradually began to return. David sat next to me the whole time. His fingers moved rapidly across the tablet screen, occasionally stopping to type a few words. He was calm, like a general commanding a battle. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Finishing the game," David replied without looking up. "Mom, in the 2 hours you were unconscious, a lot has happened." He turned the tablet toward me. On the screen is a series of bank transfers from Andrew's personal account. The amounts range from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. The recipient is a shell company in the Cayman Islands, and the actual owner of this company is Sarah. She thought she did everything in secret. But the offshore account she used was opened in a specific investment bank. And one of the shareholders of that bank is me. I froze. "When?" "Last year," David smiled. "Mom, you did not think I sat in my room playing video games all day, did you?" I looked at this young man. White shirt, rolled up sleeves, a simple mechanical watch on his wrist. My gift to him for his 18th birthday. His facial features were strikingly similar to his father's in his youth, but his gaze was clearer and deeper than Andrew's. "What else did she do?" I asked. "A lot." David swiped to the next page. "Besides siphoning family assets, she hired a private investigator to follow you. He took photos of you and sent them to father, claiming you were having an affair." I was stunned. The photos were taken very cleverly. In moments when you were shaking someone's hand or having lunch with clients, the angles were chosen so that every photo looked compromising. David's voice was calm, but I could hear suppressed rage in it. Father believed it, or rather, he needed an excuse to justify his own infidelity. And Sarah gave him that excuse. I closed my eyes. So that was it. That was why Andrew had become so cold to me over the past year, why he refused to listen to any explanations. He already had so-called proof. "She also tracked your movements," David continued. "The hotels you stayed at on business trips, lists of clients you met. She had everything. She was constantly looking for an excuse to kick you out of the house and take your place." I chuckled bitterly. David set the tablet aside and looked at me seriously. "Mom, I have to tell you something. Listen and try to stay calm." "Speak." In the recording of Sarah's conversation with that investigator, a certain plan was mentioned. David slowed his speech. She asked if there was a drug that would make a person slowly fade away without a visible cause, eventually making it look like sudden death from an illness. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The investigator gave her a number. It was an underground channel selling illegal substances. David opened a file. She contacted them and bought 2 things. The first is the sleeping pill she slipped into your tea today, and the second has not been used yet. David looked at me. It is a slow-acting poison. It needs to be taken over 3 months to take effect. The attack looks like sudden cardiac arrest. My fingers trembled. Not from fear, but from rage. 2 years of friendship, 2 years of gratitude. I helped her get a job at the company, gave her a stable life, and a decent salary. And in return, she cold-bloodedly planned my murder. She wanted you to sign a voluntary asset forfeiture agreement. As soon as you signed it, she would have made her move. Andrew knew about the agreement, though he did not know about the second drug. After tonight's gala, he planned to bring Sarah home and force you to sign everything. I wanted to laugh. I, Anna Sterling, 42 years old, had never harmed anyone. I was faithful to my husband, my son, this home. And in the end, they did not even want to leave me the right to live. Fine, I stood up. Let them come. Mom. David looked at me. They want to force me to sign. Let them try. I walked to the walk-in closet and took a document folder from the safe. But they do not know that I have something too. The folder contained all the evidence of Andrew's infidelity, as well as a prenuptial agreement. When Andrew was just starting his business, the Vance Corporation was nothing. My father invested the initial capital. My father was a corporate lawyer in New York. He strictly forced Andrew to sign this agreement. If Andrew cheated on me during the marriage, 51% of the Vance Corporation shares would automatically transfer to the ownership of me and our son. Mom, this contract is legally binding. It was drafted by your father, he was the family law attorney. David smiled. When he smiled, his eyes curved, and he looked like that little boy I remembered. But now this boy was taller than me. His shoulders were broader, his voice deeper. He had become a man who could protect me. So tonight is the final scene. Mom, are you ready? I am ready. David stood up, walked over to me, and gave me a light hug. The embrace was brief, but it made my eyes sting. For 2 years, I had not shed a single tear, not in front of anyone, not even my son. But now, when his arms wrapped around me, I suddenly felt that all my grievances and restraint had been seen. Mom, listen. David's voice sounded right at my ear, so that only the two of us could hear. Tonight, I will make everyone know the price those who wronged you will have to pay. He let go of me, took a step back, and dialed the driver's number. Sam, get the car ready. Ma'am is heading out. Where to? The driver asked. David glanced at me, and the corners of his lips lifted slightly. To the gala. On the live broadcast, the evening had reached its peak. The host on stage, microphone in hand, loudly announced the start of the auction. The first item was displayed on the stand. It was an emerald necklace. It was said that in the early 20th century, a wealthy merchant gave it to his wife. Later, when he took a mistress, the wife sold the necklace, used the money to open her own department store, and became one of the few female entrepreneurs of that era. Interesting, David looked at the necklace on the screen. Mom, that is your item. Mine. I had changed and was standing in front of the mirror. I was not wearing an haute couture gown, but a sharp, tailored black pantsuit. Underneath, a white silk blouse. On my feet, thin high heels. This was my style. Cold, I did not need anyone's approval. Let us go. David opened the door and offered his arm. Mom, tonight you are the main character. I took my son's arm. We left the bedroom, walked down the stairs, and stepped out of our Long Island estate. The night wind hit my face, cold and sobering. The city lights merged into a glowing sea. In the distance, a beam of light shot into the sky from the roof of the Plaza Hotel. The gala was taking place there. It was the most famous hotel in the city. The car was waiting at the entrance. Sam opened the door. David helped me in, then walked around and got in on the other side. To the hotel, go through the service entrance, so no one sees us. Got it, Mr. David. Sam started the engine. The car pulled out of the neighborhood and merged into the flow of city traffic. The skyscrapers outside the window rushed by. Streetlights illuminated the interior one by one, sliding across David's profile. He was talking on the phone. Nick, is what I asked for ready? Ready, came a deep male voice from the receiver. All the media outlets have been tipped off. We intercepted the broadcast signal. The backup line is ready to go live. Excellent. Wait for my command. He hung up and dialed another number. Mr. Sullivan, do you have the contract with you? I have it, the man on the phone replied. Mr. David, with the contract your grandfather drafted, Vance does not stand a chance. Perfect. David ended the call and turned to me. Mom, when we arrive, you wait backstage. I will call you when it is time to come out. What are you going to do? You will see soon. David chuckled. Mom, do you trust me? I looked him in the eyes. I trust you. David nodded and said no more. The car turned into an alley. Ahead was the service entrance of the Plaza Hotel. Several black vans with tinted windows were parked near the entrance. David opened the door and stepped out. He offered me his hand. Let us go, Mom. I have been playing this chess game for 2 years. Tonight, it is time for checkmate. The triumph of the imposter. The car stopped in the shadows near the service entrance of the Plaza Hotel. David was in no rush to get out. He rested the tablet on his knees. The screen was divided into 6 small windows showing live feeds from the security cameras in the banquet hall. I did not know how he gained access to them, but nothing surprised me anymore. Mom, look. David enlarged one of the images. The camera was pointed at the center table. Sarah was sitting there. To her left was Andrew, to her right were several board members of the corporation. She crossed her legs, dangling her high heel, held a glass of champagne, and was talking about something with the gray-haired older man next to her. She acted so naturally, as if she had been born into this environment. This gray-haired man was Richard Pierce, the second largest shareholder of the corporation and an old friend of my father's. I saw Richard frown slightly and lean back in his chair, clearly not wanting to continue the conversation. But Sarah, noticing nothing, kept talking and even tried to pat his shoulder. Does she not realize whose dress she is wearing? I said coldly. Of course, she realizes. That is exactly why she wore it. In the hall, the host announced an intermission. The lights grew brighter. Guests began to move around the room, exchanging pleasantries with glasses in hand. Sarah took Andrew's arm, and they, like a real married couple, started walking around the tables. Andrew, and who is this? Asked a lady in a burgundy evening gown. Before Andrew could answer, Sarah beat him to it. I am Andrew's wife, Sarah. And you must be Mary Jenkins. Andrew has mentioned you often. I clenched my fists. Mary Jenkins' facial expression noticeably tensed. She knew me. Last year, we sat at the same table at a charity dinner. She shot Andrew a questioning look. Andrew did not deny anything. He just smiled faintly, and said, Sarah is accompanying me tonight. The phrase was ambiguous. He did not acknowledge her as his wife, but he did not deny it either. Vague enough for everyone to interpret in their own way. And enough for Sarah to continue triumphing. Mom, did you notice Father's expression? David enlarged the image. I looked closely. Andrew had a smile on his face, but it did not reach his eyes. His gaze constantly roamed the room, as if he were looking for someone or fearing something. He is afraid. He knows this gala is important to you, and you could not have missed it. But you are still not here. He does not know what to expect. He is afraid I will make a scene. No, David shook his head. He is afraid you will not make a scene. I froze. Think about it, Mom. If you burst in screaming, in his eyes you would just be hysterical. He would have every right to claim you had a nervous breakdown and send you away to a facility. But if you do not make a scene, he will be even more convinced that you have finally given up. David looked at me. But he forgot about the third possibility. Which is, you will not make a scene, but someone will do it for you. David switched the camera view. Now we saw the hallway near the kitchen. Several men in black suits were quietly discussing something. One of them looked up, and the camera captured his face. He wore a navy blue suit, wire-rimmed glasses, looked to be in his 40s, with an intelligent but piercing appearance. In his hands, he held a document folder sealed with a red notary stamp. Who is that? I asked. Victor Sullivan, grandfather's best student, now one of the top 3 family law attorneys in the state. I looked at the folder and felt a lump form in my throat. My father had been gone for 5 years. But what he left behind was still protecting me. Has Victor been waiting long? I asked. Since the beginning of the evening. He has been standing in that hallway for almost 3 hours. Making him wait so long. It is fine, David interrupted me. Victor said he would wait as long as it takes. He said your father once helped his entire family, and he owes our family an unpayable debt. He closed the tablet and turned to me. Mom, right now you will get out of the car, go through this service entrance, and take the freight elevator to the 3rd floor. Victor will be waiting for you by the elevator. His voice grew quieter. He will tell you what to do next. And you? And I will go through the main entrance, David smiled. When he said those words, his gaze suddenly changed. It was not the look of an 18-year-old boy. It was the look of a hunter watching prey in a trap. Are you alone? No, David opened the door. I brought a lot of people with me. He stepped out of the car, closed the door quietly, and nodded to me through the glass. Then he turned and walked toward another black van. The sliding door opened. Inside sat people I did not know. Someone handed him a package, someone whispered in his ear. The van pulled away and headed toward the main entrance. Ma'am, it is time, Sam turned to me. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped out. The night wind, mixed with the noise of Manhattan, hit my face. I looked up at the spire of the hotel. It was crowned with a golden glow, like a giant crown on the head of the city. But tonight, I did not come to wear a crown. I came to take it off. It was quiet at the service entrance. Only one security guard in uniform stood there. Seeing me, he became visibly flustered. Ma'am, it is me. Open the freight elevator. The guard hesitated, but eventually pressed the button and let me in. The elevator moved up slowly. I was alone in the cabin. The mirror reflected my figure in the black pantsuit. Strict, concise, without unnecessary accessories. Sarah put on my dress, my diamonds, my emerald bracelet, but she could not put on my essence. The elevator doors opened. Victor Sullivan stood at the entrance in an impeccable suit, holding that very folder. Seeing me, his eyes suddenly turned red. Anna. Victor, I nodded. Victor Sullivan was my father's protégé. He followed him from his law school days at Columbia, then opened his own firm and became a luminary in his field. He had seen me grow up and knew better than anyone how I lived all these years in the Vance household. I came 3 times, Victor said. 3 times to see you. The first time Andrew said you were resting and not receiving guests. The second time Sarah opened the door and said you were unwell and should not see anyone. And the third time. Tonight is the 3rd time, Victor looked at me, and you finally got on your feet. I reached my hand out to him. The contract. Victor took the document out of the folder. The paper had already slightly yellowed, but every letter on it was clear and weighty. It was my father's handwriting. The terms were written so flawlessly that there was not a single loophole left. When your father forced Andrew to sign this contract, he did not dare ask a single unnecessary question, Victor said. Your father said verbatim. If you truly love Anna, this contract will never take effect. But he did not love me, I said. Right. Victor handed me the contract. Therefore, tonight this contract takes effect. I took the document, flipped to the last page, and saw Andrew's signature. The pressure was so strong that it left a mark on the back. He was venting his frustration, but he signed it anyway. Is all the evidence gathered? I asked. Gathered. Victor took another folder from his briefcase. Proof of infidelity, records of asset transfers, audio and video recordings, a list of witnesses, and the testimony of that private investigator. This afternoon he voluntarily came to our firm and confessed everything. He came himself? David found him. Victor smiled slightly. Your son is a very strong person. He did not threaten, did not beat anyone. He simply listed what school the investigator's daughter goes to, what time her classes end, and what cafe she likes to visit. After that, the investigator fell to his knees. My heart clenched. Anna, do not misunderstand. Victor hurried to add. David did not lay a finger on his daughter. He just told that investigator, you have a family, and I have a family. I do not want to touch your family, but for that, you must tell the truth. He went alone? Alone, Victor said. That investigator has been in this business for 20 years, he has seen all sorts of thugs, but he said that no man had ever instilled such fear in him. I did not know what to say. My son, the one I nursed. The one I led by the hand to kindergarten, the one who grew up before my eyes, whose voice cracked, who grew an Adam's apple. While I knew nothing, he had already become a blade. Let us go. Victor put the documents away. The gala has a few final parts left. After the auction, there will be a reception. David said the auction is the best time to start. Why? Because at that moment, all attention will be focused on the stage. Victor pressed the elevator button. Anna, no matter what you hear or see, do not give in to emotions. David said he has everything under control. The elevator doors opened, we stepped in. The elevator slowly crawled up. The numbers changed from 3 to 4, from 4 to 5, and finally stopped on the top floor. The moment the doors opened, I heard music from the banquet hall, the clinking of glasses, and fake social pleasantries. At the end of the hallway, huge carved doors were visible, with lights shining behind them. Victor handed me the contract and gave my shoulder an encouraging squeeze. Go, I will be waiting by the side entrance. I took the contract and pushed the door. The warm air of the banquet hall, mixed with the scent of perfume, hit my face. Through the crowd, I saw Sarah standing near the stage. She held Andrew's arm and beamed with happiness. She did not know that the main character was about to step onto the stage. The prince's entrance. The lights in the banquet hall suddenly went out at that moment. Only one spotlight remained, pointed at the stage. It brightly illuminated the host. He was a famous television presenter in an elegant tuxedo with a well-trained voice. With a microphone in hand, he announced. And now, the climax of our charity auction. Ladies and gentlemen, the final lot of tonight's evening, provided by the wife of Mr. Andrew Vance. An Art Deco emerald necklace. The starting bid is $500,000. Applause erupted. All eyes turned to Sarah. She stood next to Andrew, her chin slightly raised, a flawless smile on her face. It seemed she had rehearsed this role countless times. She placed her hand on Andrew's forearm. The emerald bracelet, stolen from my vanity, gleamed softly in the spotlight. We thank Mrs. Vance for her generosity, the host smiled. Mrs. Vance, perhaps you would step up to the stage and say a few words. Sarah glanced at Andrew. He gave a barely noticeable nod. She gathered the hem of the dress and, clicking the heels that did not belong to her, stepped up to the stage one step at a time. The spotlight followed her, illuminating her figure. The champagne-colored dress sparkled with diamond dust, and she truly looked like a high society lady. She took the microphone and cleared her throat. Thank you all. Her voice was gentle, with deliberate softness. My husband specifically chose this necklace for tonight's auction. Our family has always been actively involved in charity, and we hope these funds will help those in need. I stood in the shadows by the side door and listened to her repeat, my husband, our family. Nausea rose in my throat. Mrs. Vance is so beautiful and kind, the host flatteringly remarked. Well, let us begin the bidding. Which of our esteemed guests will place the first bid? 600,000. Someone raised a paddle. 650. 700. The bids rose one after another. Sarah stood on stage, enjoying the center of attention. Her smile grew more and more smug, and at that moment, the main doors of the hall suddenly swung open. The carved doors opened with such a loud creak that in the silence of the auction, it sounded deafening. Everyone turned toward the entrance. David stood there. He had changed. Instead of a white shirt, he wore a sharp, perfectly tailored dark suit that accentuated his broad shoulders and narrow waist. Around his neck was a dark red tie, which I had given him for his last birthday. He said he would wear it only for the most important occasion. Behind him stood 4 men. All in black suits, looking imposing. Silence reigned in the hall for a moment, and then, like a tide, whispers spread. That is the younger Vance, Andrew's son. What is he doing here? He never shows up at these events. Andrew's face changed. He stared at the entrance, his eyebrows furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. He wanted to walk over and stop David. But David did not even glance at him. David's gaze cut through the crowd and locked onto Sarah, standing on the stage. He smiled, and then stepped forward. He walked through the rows of guests, under their staring, bewildered gazes, step by step approaching the stage. Dave, what are you doing here? Andrew finally spoke. His voice was low, laced with suppressed anger. David stopped and turned to his father. His gaze was as cold as ice. Dad, he said, I came to help you. Andrew froze. David did not say another word. He continued walking, reaching the edge of the stage. The host stood frozen, not knowing what to say. May I have the microphone? David asked politely. Oh, of course. Mr. David, the host hastily handed him the microphone. David took it and calmly stepped onto the stage, standing next to Sarah. She was clearly flustered. Her smile froze, her eyes darted around. She did not dare look at David. She wanted to step back, but there was too little room on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, David raised the microphone. His voice rang out clear and bright. Thank you for coming to the Vance Corporation Charity Gala tonight. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is David Sterling. I am the son of Mr. Andrew Vance. Pronouncing, the son of Mr. Andrew Vance, he paused to let everyone hear. Since childhood, I have carried my mother's maiden name, he added. The hall erupted. Carries his mother's name? Then who is this Mrs. Vance? Everyone looked at Sarah. Their gazes revealed a complex mix of emotions. Tonight, I am here to deliver a few words on behalf of my mother. David turned to Sarah. His smile was soft. This is Aunt Sarah. He paused. First of all, I want to thank you. Sarah froze. The guests in the hall did too. Even Andrew was stunned. Thank you for replacing my mother at this gala tonight. David's voice was steady, as if he were reading a prepared speech. Thank you for putting on my mother's dress, her jewelry, and standing here for her, fulfilling this social duty. Every word sounded like praise, but every word fell like a knife strike. A quiet hum started in the hall. What is going on? This woman is not Mrs. Vance? I suspected something was off for a long time. I have seen the real Mrs. Vance. She does not look like that at all. This is the mistress showing up in the wife's dress. Sarah's face changed color from white to red, from red to a bluish pale. She wanted to say something, but David did not give her the chance. Ladies and gentlemen, David turned to the audience. His voice suddenly grew louder. I apologize that you had to see an imposter here. The word imposter exploded in the hall like a bomb. Sarah staggered, barely staying on her feet. She tried to grab onto something, but only caught air. Dave, have you lost your mind? Andrew finally snapped out of it. He took long strides toward the stage. His face was twisted with fury. Get down from there right now. Dad, do not rush. David glanced at him. The corners of his lips lifted slightly. I need to announce one more thing. He raised the microphone and, addressing everyone present, spoke distinctly, word by word. Regarding the affair between my father, Mr. Andrew Vance, and this lady, Miss Sarah Jenkins, I have gathered all the necessary evidence. And tonight, I want to present 3 documents. He pulled an envelope from the inner pocket of his jacket. First, a complete list of all my father's marital infidelities over the past 2 years. A gasp of horror swept through the hall. Second, bank statements confirming the transfer of family assets by Mistress and send WSAWW Jenkins to her own accounts. Sarah's face turned completely white. And third, David held up the envelope so everyone could see. A prenuptial agreement drafted 20 years ago by my grandfather, attorney Richard Sterling, and signed personally by my father. According to this agreement, in the event of my father's marital infidelity, 51% of the Vance Corporation shares automatically transfer to the ownership of my mother, Anna Sterling, and myself. Silence reigned in the hall for a moment. And then, like a television suddenly unmuted, all voices erupted simultaneously. Someone jumped up, someone pulled out their phone, someone rushed toward Andrew, someone covered their mouth in shock. Camera flashes went off like crazy. The lenses were aimed at David, at Andrew, at the mistress staggering on stage. Security, turn on the lights, cut the broadcast. Andrew shouted. They will not cut it, David said calmly. Dad, tonight's broadcast is not going through the hotel's channels. Right now, at least 3 million people across the country are watching it. Andrew's face turned white. You, Dad. David lowered the microphone, stepped off the stage, and walked over to his father. He spoke so quietly that only the two of them could hear. My mother waited 2 years. She waited for tonight. He patted Andrew on the shoulder. The gesture was like a father comforting a son, not the other way around. Everything you owe her, you will pay back tonight. Then he turned around, raised the microphone again, and, addressing all the guests, all the cameras, smiled a pure, boyish smile. Ladies and gentlemen, the auction continues. However, the name of the donor of this emerald necklace will have to be changed. It is not Mrs. Vance. He looked toward the side door. It is Mrs. Sterling. The curtain at the side door was pulled back. Light flooded the opening. I stood there. Everyone turned and looked at me. In a black pantsuit, without makeup, clean and strict, Anna Sterling. Thanks to the aunt. The moment the light fell on me, the entire hall grew so quiet that you could hear the bubbles popping in a champagne glass. I stood by the side entrance in my sharp black suit. Not a drop of excess makeup on my face, only my lips were painted bright red. Like a final stroke, clean and decisive. Behind me stood attorney Victor Sullivan with a briefcase in his hands. His face projected rock-solid, calm and confidence. The gazes of everyone present darted between me and Sarah. One in her own clothes, without makeup, but with a straight back. The other in a borrowed dress, dripping in jewels, but trembling. Who was genuine and who was the fake was obvious. That is Anna Sterling. The real Mrs. Vance. God, then who is that on stage? The mistress came to the reception in the wife's dress. What madness! Andrew Vance must have lost his mind. Whispers rolled in from all sides like a tidal wave. I heard them, but I did not care. My gaze cut through the crowd and locked onto David, standing on stage. He gave me a barely noticeable nod, and a smile only I could understand flashed at the corner of his lips. He was saying, "Mom, your cue." I stepped into the hall. The click of my heels on the marble floor was crisp and measured. Tick, tack, tick. Every step was like a countdown. The guests parted, making way for me. Those who had just been flattering Sarah now shrunk their heads into their shoulders and backed away, afraid to meet my eyes. Andrew stood at the foot of the stage. His face was as white as paper. He looked at me. His lips moved. He wanted to say something, but no words came out. I did not look at him. I walked straight toward the stage. David reached out and helped me up. His palm was warm and strong. Taking my hand, he squeezed it slightly, as if transmitting a signal. Sarah stood on stage, not knowing what to do, to step back or stay. Her face no longer held its previous triumph. Instead, there was shame and the terror of public exposure. She looked from David to me. Her lips trembled. "Anna. Do not call me that," I said. My voice was not loud, but David held the microphone to me, and the whole hall heard. Sarah recoiled, her heel catching on the hem of the dress, and she stumbled, almost falling. No one rushed to help her. The very same ladies who had just been drinking champagne with her now looked at her with cold contempt. David handed me the microphone. I took it and faced the hundreds of guests. "Good evening. I am Anna Sterling." Just a few words, but the audience's reaction was more explosive than to any long speech. Camera flashes went off frantically. Shutters clicked in unison. Some reporters pushed through to the very edge of the stage. They had waited too long for such high society drama. "Mrs. Sterling, what can you say about tonight's events?" "Mrs. Sterling, what is the nature of the relationship between Sarah Jenkins and Andrew Vance? Are you filing for divorce?" Questions rained down like machine gun fire. David stepped forward, shielding me, and raised his hand. "Quiet, please. My mother will answer your questions, but not now. Right now, I have one more piece of business to finish." He turned to me and held out his hand. "Mom, the divorce papers." I took a document out of the inner pocket of my jacket. I had signed it on the way to the hotel. My name was at the bottom. The ink was already dry. Every letter was written with heavy pressure, as if I had poured all my 2 years of patience and humiliation into those words. David took the papers, unfolded them, and held them up to the cameras. "This is the petition for divorce, signed by my mother, Anna Sterling." His voice was clear and calm. "As of tonight, her marriage to Mr. Andrew Vance is officially terminated." The hall exploded. Furthermore, David raised his voice over the noise. "Regarding the 3 documents I mentioned, I will now present each of them." He pulled the first sheet from the envelope. First, documented facts of Mr. Andrew Vance's marital infidelities over the past 2 years. Times, locations, witnesses, everything is verified. He listed several hotels, several cities, several dates. With every word, Andrew's face grew whiter. Second, David pulled out the second sheet. Over the past 6 months, Miss Sarah Jenkins transferred $500,000 of joint family assets to her own accounts through 3 offshore transactions. "I did not," Sarah shrieked. "You are lying. You are slandering me." And third, David, ignoring her, pulled out the third sheet, the yellowed prenuptial agreement with the red stamp drafted by my father, attorney Richard Sterling. It clearly states, in the event of Mr. Vance's marital infidelity, 51% of the Vance Corporation shares automatically transfer to the ownership of my mother, Anna Sterling, and myself. He held up all 3 documents so every camera could capture them. All 3 documents are notarized and carry full legal weight. "Mr. Sullivan." Victor Sullivan stepped out from the side door, walked to the center of the stage, holding his briefcase. He pulled out a stack of documents with red stamps and unrolled them before the cameras. "I am attorney Victor Sullivan, vice chair of the Family Law Section of the American Bar Association." His voice was confident and authoritative. "I guarantee the authenticity and legality of these 3 documents with my professional reputation and my license." When one of the top 3 lawyers in the country makes such a public statement, no one harbors any doubts. The noise in the hall reached its peak. Someone yelled questions at Andrew, someone calmed their neighbor, someone photographed furiously, someone was on their phone. The hall turned into a boiling cauldron. The spotlight darted between the stage and Andrew, not knowing whom to illuminate. David took the microphone again and turned to Sarah. "Aunt Sarah." He spoke those words with impeccable politeness, but they struck Sarah like an electric shock. "I told you I wanted to thank you." David stepped toward her, looking down at her. "Thank you for standing here tonight, for my mom. After all, these receptions are very tiring. It is nice when there is someone to take your place." Sarah's lips trembled. However, David's tone shifted. Since you like standing next to my father instead of my mother so much, I will grant your wish. He turned back to the audience, and his voice suddenly boomed. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on behalf of my mother, Anna Sterling, I announce, he paused, and the whole hall held its breath. All of Mr. Andrew Vance's supplementary credit cards were cancelled tonight at 7 p.m. His personal accounts, due to the illegal transfer of family assets, have been temporarily frozen by court order. What? Andrew finally found his voice. He stepped forward. His face darkened with fury. David, do you dare? Dad? David turned to him. His gaze was as calm as the surface of a dead lake. You no longer own 51% of the corporation's shares. According to grandfather's prenuptial agreement, as of this moment, actual control of the corporation is in my mother's hands. Andrew's dark face turned deathly pale. All your credit cards, personal accounts, including the deed to your mansion, are all subject to a preliminary injunction. As of this moment, the only money you have is the cash in your pocket. And therefore, David turned back to Sarah with a smile on his face. The smile was so warm it was terrifying. Aunt Sarah, thank you. For what? Sarah's voice trembled. Thank you for agreeing to take this on. David spoke the words slowly and distinctly, so every sound reached the ears of those present. My father is now in your care. Dead silence fell over the hall. Not just silence, but the kind that comes when everyone inhales simultaneously and runs out of air. And then someone was the first to chuckle quietly, and the laughter, like dominoes, began to spread through the hall. Someone covered their mouth. Someone lowered their head and their shoulders shook. Someone just turned away. The very people who had been fawning over Andrew moments ago were now laughing the loudest. Sarah's face went from deathly pale to crimson. I do not. She backed away step by step. Her heel caught on the hem, and this time, she truly fell. She crashed onto the stage. The champagne-colored dress pulled around her. The diamonds sparkled in the spotlights, but the woman wearing them looked pathetic. You said you loved him. David looked down at her, still with that same softness in his voice. You just called yourself Mrs. Vance. Surely Mrs. Vance can support Mr. Vance. Sarah opened her mouth, but could not utter a word. It was not that she did not want to, she had nothing to say. For 2 years she had climbed her way up, worn someone else's clothes, worn someone else's jewelry, called herself Mrs. Vance. Now Andrew was bankrupt, and all her efforts had turned into a farce. And one more thing, David said into the microphone. I request that the donor of the final lot of tonight's auction be changed to Anna Sterling. This emerald necklace is originally my mother's dowry, a gift from her grandmother, just like that bracelet Miss Jenkins is wearing. All eyes turned to the emerald bracelet on Sarah's wrist. It shimmered beautifully in the spotlight. My grandmother put that bracelet on my mother's wrist when she turned 18. Miss Jenkins. You have worn it long enough. It is time to return it. Sarah instinctively covered her wrist. David did not step closer to snatch it. He just stood and looked down at her like a foolish child. Security, he said quietly. 2 security guards in black entered the hall, pushed through the crowd, and stood by the stage. Sarah's face finally sagged. With trembling hands, she took the bracelet off her wrist and placed it on the stage. The bracelet gleamed lonely in the spotlight, making a soft clink. David bent down, picked it up, pulled a velvet cloth from his jacket pocket, carefully wiped it, and walked over to me. Mom, he said. Grandmother's gift. I brought it back to you. In his eyes, there was finally no coldness, no calculation, only tenderness. I took the bracelet, took his wrist, and slipped the emerald back onto my own hand. My hand was not big, and not small. Just right. The hall exploded with thunderous applause, not polite, but genuine, like an ovation after a brilliantly won battle. Someone whistled, someone yelled, bravo. Several of my society acquaintances sat with red eyes. Andrew stood rooted to the spot, like a statue struck by lightning. There was no longer anger on his face, only emptiness. Not calm, but the emptiness that comes when a person loses everything in an instant and their brain shuts down. He looked at me. I looked into his eyes. Those very eyes that once made my heart beat faster. Now there was only gray haze in them. I said my final sentence into the microphone. Let the auction continue. Then I returned the microphone to the host and, taking David's arm, walked off the stage toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Sarah's muffled sobbing. I did not look back. The fall of an empire, I did not look back. But Andrew caught up to me. His steps were heavy. His dress shoes thumped dully against the marble floor, as if he wanted to crush it. Near the exit, a strong hand grabbed my wrist. The grip was so tight my bones ached. Anna. Andrew's voice crashed down on me from above. Suppressed fury boiled in it. What are you doing? I turned and looked at him. This man, whom I once looked up to with admiration, now stood with veins bulging on his forehead. His tie was askew. His eyes were bloodshot with anger. He never lost his temper in public. That was his pride, his composure, and dignity. But now not a trace of it remained. Let go, I said. You caused such a scandal, and you want me to let you go? Andrew lowered his voice, but every word was filtered through his teeth. Do you know how important tonight is for the corporation? Do you know what the media will write about this? And do you know what Sarah did to me? I asked in return. Andrew froze. She slipped sleeping pills into my tea. Today, at our house. She brought me a cup of tea, I drank it, and I remember nothing else. You are lying. Sarah's voice came from behind. She had already gotten up from the stage. Her dress was crumpled, her hair disheveled. Stumbling, she ran up to us. Andrew, do not listen to her. I did not do anything. Nothing? David intervened. He stepped out from behind me, holding his phone. Should I play the recording right now? Sarah's mouth dropped open. The recording of your conversation with the private investigator, the text messages about buying illegal substances, and your discussion on how to slip my mother a slow-acting poison. David listed them one by one. Every word pierced Sarah like an ice pick. Should I play it all? Sarah's face completely fell. She took a step back and bumped into Andrew, instinctively grabbing his arm. Andrew did not look at her, he looked at David. And complex emotions fought in his eyes. You have known for a long time? He asked his son. 2 years, David replied calmly. Since the day you brought Sarah into the company, 2 years. That meant David, as a 16-year-old teenager, had already started preparing this game. Andrew's Adam's apple bobbed. He wanted to say something, but the phone in his pocket rang. He took it out. The caller ID showed the company's chief financial officer. Yes. What? Andrew's voice broke. Mr. Vance, things are bad. The voice on the phone was so piercing that I heard it. Our options contract was triggered. 3 minutes ago, 3 offshore funds owned by David Sterling simultaneously started shorting the stock. The corporation's shares have already fallen below the critical margin. What? Andrew's face twisted. And the bank also reported that your personal and corporate accounts are frozen by court order. The grounds are illegal transfer of family assets. And the board of directors. Richard Pierce just sent out an email stating that according to the prenuptial agreement, 51% of the shares have already automatically been transferred. The new owner demands an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. 3 pieces of bad news. One after another. Like 3 bombs, they exploded in Andrew's head. His face went from deathly pale to ashen gray. The very Andrew Vance who always kept everything under control now stood in the hallway of the banquet hall, slouched like a paper tiger whose frame had been yanked out. Dave. His voice suddenly became quiet, almost inaudible. You are my son, right? With the last name Sterling. Those 4 words were stronger than any long speech. I am your son, but my last name is Sterling. I am your son, but I belong to the Sterling family. I am your son, but you never truly owned me. Andrew's shoulders slumped. He leaned against the wall, closed his eyes. His chest heaved heavily. Do you know what it means to short the corporation's stock? He asked hoarsely. This is your grandfather's life's work. This is my grandfather's life's investment, David interrupted him. The corporation was founded by you. That is true, but the initial capital was invested by my grandfather. You signed the options contract, you lost. Control passed to me. Those are your own rules. Andrew had nothing to counter with. The options contract. He signed it himself 3 years ago. Back then he was riding high, confident that under his leadership, the corporation would only prosper. He could never have imagined that his own son, 3 years later, would crash the stock and bring this scenario to life. Sarah stood nearby, completely dumbfounded. She did not understand what an options contract, shorting stock, or frozen accounts meant. But she understood one thing. Andrew had no more money. Andrew, what is happening? She grabbed his sleeve. You said the corporation was yours. Shut up. Andrew pushed her away roughly. Sarah hit the wall, the back of her head thudding against the paneling. She grabbed her head. Tears streamed from her eyes, but in them was not sorrow, but fear. You lied to me. She looked at Andrew. You said you would divorce your wife. You said the corporation would be ours. You did not tell me any of this. If I had told you, you would not have stayed with me, Andrew chuckled coldly. Sarah, did you come to me for me, or for my money? You know the answer perfectly well yourself. What about me? Andrew stepped toward her. His eyes were bloodshot. Because of you, I fought with my wife, my son, the board of directors, everyone. And now what? What can you give me? Sarah's lips trembled. She could not utter a word. She could give him nothing. All her trump cards were Andrew's love and his money. Now love had turned into hatred, and money into debts. She was left with nothing but air in her hands. I stood nearby and watched this scene with strange calmness. For 2 years I had imagined what I would feel when everything was revealed. Joy, anger, sadness. None of that, only emptiness. Like a spring that had been compressed for a long time and then released. And it did not shoot out with force, but simply relaxed with a feeling of depletion. Andrew, I said. He turned to me. His eyes no longer held their previous fury, only a complex, indescribable emotion. I have signed the divorce papers. Victor will handle further matters with you. Asset division according to my father's contract. Do not look for me, and do not look for Dave. Anna. Do not say my name. You do not deserve to. I turned to leave. Mom. David walked up to me, took off his suit jacket, and draped it over my shoulders. It is cold outside. His jacket was large, smelling of freshness. He wrapped my shoulders, protecting me from the night chill. The hotel doorman opened the door for us. The sky was already dark. The city lights merged into a single glowing sea. The stream of cars in the distance turned into a golden river. To the garage, David told Sam. Sam nodded and started the engine. The car slowly pulled away from the hotel. Passing the main entrance, I saw a crowd of reporters. The long lenses of cameras were aimed at the entrance to the banquet hall. Flashes illuminated everything around like daylight. Mom, David suddenly said, are you mad at me? I turned to him. His profile in the light of the street lamps kept appearing and disappearing. His 18-year-old features were still youthfully sharp and clean, but what was in his eyes had long surpassed his age. Mad for what? For arranging everything like this tonight. For not leaving you a way out when I started planning all this. At 16, he said. That summer, I saw a message Sarah sent to father on his phone. What did it say? When will your wife finally die? My heart clenched. I went to father with that message. He said his assistant was just joking. David chuckled. The smile was cold as winter moonlight. That was when I decided. Decided what? That he and she would pay for everything. The car entered the underground parking garage. The light faded. David's face was hidden in the shadows. I could not see his expression, but I felt his hand tremble slightly. Not from fear, but from the tremor of a 2-year release of tension. Dave, I took his hand. He turned to me. You did everything right. You protected me. David remained silent for a long time, and then squeezed my hand back. Lightly, like in childhood when he used to hold my finger. Mom, there is one last piece of business to take care of, he said. What business? With Sarah. David's gaze turned cold again. She bought poison. She wanted to kill you. This cannot be left unpunished. The car stopped in a parking spot. Sam turned off the engine. The garage grew quiet. Only the hum of the ventilation could be heard. David took out his phone and dialed a number. Nick, is everything ready? The person on the other end answered something. David hung up and turned to me. Mom, wait in the car. For the next scene, you just need to watch. Judgment and evidence. The car did not head home. David asked Sam to park in the darkest corner of the garage, turn off the lights and the engine. The cabin plunged into quiet darkness. Then he pulled out his tablet and turned on another security camera feed. On the screen was the living room of our mansion. When did you install the cameras? I asked. 3 months ago. Replaced the Wi-Fi router, the smoke detectors, and the digital photo frame in the living room. I asked no more. I was already used to it. On the screen, the living room was empty, only Martha was clearing the coffee table. She took the very cup I drank from, carefully placed it in an evidence bag, sealed it, and set it aside. This was David's instruction. The cup retained traces of the sleeping pills, irrefutable proof of Sarah's guilt. About 20 minutes later, the front door burst open with a crash. Andrew walked into the house. Behind him, stumbling, ran Sarah. The hem of her dress was torn. She was limping. Her face was covered in tears and smeared makeup. A pathetic sight. Andrew, listen to me. What else is there to talk about? Andrew turned around and yelled at her. You disgraced me in front of the whole country tonight. I disgraced you? Sarah shrieked. It was your little brat. The sharp sound of a slap echoed through the empty living room. Sarah was thrown onto the sofa. She clutched her face, not believing her eyes. Try calling him that one more time. Andrew's voice was icy. I froze. He was protecting David. You hit me. Sarah's voice trembled. Andrew, you hit me. And what did you tell me before? That you would marry me, that the corporation would be ours, that woman would soon disappear. I said that would happen after she signed the agreement, Andrew hissed. And now what? The agreement is signed, the money is gone, nothing. And you, idiot, handed all the evidence right into their hands yourself. What did I? You think I do not know what you were doing behind my back? Andrew pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and threw it on the table. What is this offshore account? $500,000. Do you think I am blind? Sarah's face instantly went deathly pale. She stared at the envelope, her lips trembling. She could not utter a word. Andrew chuckled coldly. Why are you quiet? Over the 2 years you were with me, I bought you bags, cars, apartments. That was not enough. You also had to secretly siphon money. But that was for our future. Future? Andrew laughed even louder. There was so much sarcasm in his laugh. Whose future? Yours or your ex-boyfriend's, who is hiding out of state? Sarah froze. Even I froze. Ex-boyfriend. Did you think I would not find out? Andrew walked over to her, looking down. His gaze was like a knife. Your ex-Paul moved to Miami last year. You bought a condo there in his name. And you transferred the money from the offshore account to him. Sarah, you were keeping a gigolo on my dime. The scene was shocking. Even David slightly raised an eyebrow. I did not. No. Andrew grabbed her collar. I checked the property management records for that condo. Paul, male, 26 years old, has been living there for over 6 months. You fly to Miami every 2 months, telling me you are going to study the market. You were studying it in someone else's bed. Sarah's face went from deathly pale to ashen gray. She opened her mouth, tears streaming down her face, but in her eyes there was not sadness, but terror. The terror of being exposed. Listen, this is different. What is different? Andrew let her go, took a step back, and adjusted his jacket. His voice turned cold, without a single note of warmth. You took my money and supported another man. How is that any different from Anna spending my money to support David? She supported your son. Sarah shrieked. So what? Andrew replied coldly. Now he took 51% of the shares. Tomorrow, after the board meeting, I will be left with nothing. Do you think I still care? Whether you supported someone or not? Sarah went limp on the sofa like a rag doll. A soft knock sounded on the car window. David rolled down the window. Outside stood a man in a hoodie, the hood obscuring most of his face. He handed a folder of documents inside. David took it, nodded, and the man disappeared into the shadows of the garage. Let us go, David told Sam. Home. The car pulled out of the garage, cutting through the city's night streets. There were few cars left. Traffic lights blinked at empty intersections. David opened the folder, took out a stack of papers, flipped through a few pages, and handed them to me. This is what Nick found. I took the documents. On the first page was Sarah's complete correspondence with the private investigator. From her first inquiry to the order of the sleeping pills and the request for the price and administration method of a slow-acting poison. Every record had a timestamp. Ironclad evidence. On the second page was a photo of Sarah and Paul. They were hugging in front of a luxury hotel in Miami. The photo was taken 3 months ago. That was when she asked Andrew for time off, saying she was going to visit her sick mother. On the third page were bank transfer statements. The money received from Andrew was transferred by Sarah in installments to Paul's account in Miami. The total amount was over $150,000, plus the purchase agreement for the condo registered in Paul's name, paid from Sarah's account. She played the miserable victim in front of Andrew, while using his money to keep a young lover in Miami. For 2 whole years. I put the documents down and looked out the window. The car turned into our upscale neighborhood. Streetlights illuminated the oak trees on both sides of the road. I had driven this road for 7 years. Since we bought this estate and moved here. Every turn, every tree, every street sign, everything was painfully familiar. But tonight was the last time. The car stopped at the gates. The lights were on in the living room. Through the panoramic windows, 2 silhouettes were visible. Andrew stood in front of the sofa. Sarah was on her knees, clinging to his pants and saying something. She was sobbing, but Andrew stood motionless. Mom. David opened the door and turned to me. You stay in the car, I will go too. David looked at me and did not object. He helped me out. When we opened the front door, silence fell over the living room. Sarah was still on her knees. Seeing us, her face twisted in horror. She instinctively tried to get up and back away, but her legs gave out, and she crashed to the floor again. Andrew turned around. His eyes no longer held their previous fury, only deep exhaustion and some undefined emotion. Why did you come? He asked hoarsely. To get my things, I said. What things? My things. I am going up to the bedroom. Nothing that belongs to Anna Sterling will remain here. David did not follow me. He stayed in the living room facing Andrew and Sarah. He placed the folder of documents on the coffee table. Here is all the evidence against Miss Jenkins, he said. Correspondence. Bank transfers, the condo purchase agreement, photos, audio recordings. Nick has already organized everything. Sarah's gaze fell on the folder. Her pupils constricted. What do you want? Andrew asked. His voice was hoarse, like sandpaper. I do not want anything. I just came to inform you that I have already handed all this over to the police and the district attorney. What? Miss? Jenkins is suspected of attempted poisoning, illegal gathering of personal information, and illegal transfer of assets. The private investigator has already confessed and is ready to testify. The source of the illegal substances has also been identified. David's voice was flat, as if he were reading a report. Tomorrow morning, the police will come for her. Sarah let out an inhuman scream. She lunged at the table, trying to grab the folder. David did not even move, just slightly stepped aside. Sarah missed and crashed to the floor, hitting her forehead on the corner of the table. Blood trickled down her eyebrow. You cannot do this to me. She looked up. Her face was bloody, her eyes crazed. Andrew, save me. Andrew did not move. He stood and looked down at her. There was no pity or sympathy in his eyes. Not even disgust, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness that comes when a person loses everything. You said you loved me. Sarah screamed. You said you would love me forever. I said I loved you. Andrew said quietly. He suddenly chuckled. The smile was worse than crying. Sarah, because of this so-called love of yours, I lost my wife, my son, the company I built with my own hands. His voice was quiet, as if he were talking to himself. And in the end, you kept another man with my money. He turned away, no longer looking at her. Take her wherever you want. I do not want to see her anymore. That is a matter for your police, David said, turning and walking toward the stairs. He looked up and called out, Mom, did you pack your things? I stood in the upstairs hallway with a small suitcase in my hands. I had moved into this house with this suitcase 7 years ago. In it were a few pieces of jewelry inherited from my grandmother, a few photos of my father, and David's newborn hospital ID band and his tiny footprint certificate. The rest of the jewelry, clothes, bags, watches, he bought all of that. I did not need it. Let us go. I came downstairs. David took the suitcase from me and took my elbow with his other hand. We walked through the living room. Andrew stood by the panoramic window, his back to everyone. His shoulders were slouched. There were no stars in the night sky, only the distant city lights flickering in the dark. Andrew, I stopped by the door. He did not turn around. The cup of tea Sarah gave me contained poison. Martha kept it. If you want to prove you were not involved in the attempted poisoning, you better cooperate with the police. His shoulder twitched, as if he wanted to turn around, but he never did. Anna. His voice came from deep in his throat, muffled. If I say I did not know she wanted to poison you, will you believe me? I stared at his back for 3 seconds. I believe you. But the fact that you did not know does not make you innocent. Andrew said nothing more. I took David's arm and walked out the door into the dark night. Behind me, I heard Sarah's hysterical crying and Andrew's quiet breathing. The house that was once called home grew smaller and smaller in the car window until it became a blurry spot in the rearview mirror. Mom, where are we going? David asked. To a hotel. Tomorrow we will look for an apartment. No need to look. David pulled out his phone, swiped, and turned the screen to me. I already bought one 3 months ago. On the screen was a photo of an apartment. Not a mansion, but a spacious, bright luxury penthouse with a view of the Hudson River. Through the panoramic windows lay the panorama of the entire city. The title deed bore the name Anna Sterling. I looked at the photo, and my eyes stung. But this time not from hurt. My son. 3 months ago, he had already prepared an escape route for me. Chapter 8. Masks torn off. We had not even left the neighborhood when David's tablet pinged. He glanced at it, frowned slightly, and handed it to me. On the security camera screen in the Vance living room, a scene even uglier than all the previous ones was playing out after our departure. Sarah got up from the floor. Her forehead was still bleeding. Blood ran down her eyebrow, smearing half her face. But she no longer cared about the pain. She lunged at Andrew, grabbing his suit lapels, digging her nails into his shoulders. "What did you just say?" Her voice was shrill, bordering on a screech. "You said you do not want to see me anymore." Andrew pushed her away and turned his back. "Are you deaf?" Sarah, crazed, walked around him and started pounding her fists against his chest. "Andrew, who do you think you are? Do you think you still have the right to dump me?" Andrew looked up at her. Surprise flashed in his eyes. He had probably never seen Sarah like this. For 2 years, she had been tender, caring, affectionately calling him Auntie, always refined and modestly dressed. And now before him stood a woman with a bloody face, distorted features, and undisguised greed and malice in her eyes. "What are you looking at?" Sarah sneered, taking a step back and poking him with her finger. "Do you think you still have money? A company? A wife to rely on?" "Shut up," Andrew said. "I will not shut up." Sarah's voice grew higher. "Andrew, stop pretending. You said you loved me. Where did you love me? The apartment you bought me, you put in your name. The car is on the company's books. All the money you gave me is not even enough to cover what you lose in one night at the casino." Andrew's face changed. He clearly did not expect Sarah to have calculated everything so precisely. "You think I do not know," she continued. "You think I really believed you would marry me? You could not even keep a woman with Anna Sterling's status. How could you ever marry me?" I said, "Shut up." Andrew slammed his hand on the coffee table. Cups bounced and shattered on the floor. The crash startled Sarah. She stepped back half a pace, but immediately straightened up, and an even more venomous sneer appeared on her face. "Why are you yelling? Did I say something wrong? You played the almighty boss in front of me, said you would divorce your wife for me. And what was the result? 3 years passed, you got divorced, signed the agreement. She got the company shares." Her voice was toxic. "You have nothing. You are just a loudmouth who only knows how to make promises." Andrew's face turned crimson. "What did you say?" "I said you are a loser," Sarah spat. Every word was dripping with venom. "You were played for a fool by your own son from the very beginning. An 18-year-old boy spun you around however he wanted. And you still talk to me about strategic thinking. Your money, your projects, your calculations. In his eyes, it is all just a joke." Andrew's hands shook. Not from anger, but because she hit the most painful spot, the thing that mattered to him most. Reputation, dignity, the image of an omnipotent businessman in the eyes of others. But every word from Sarah tore that mask off him. "Do you know what I despise you for most?" Sarah stepped toward him. Blood dripped from her forehead onto the floor, but she ignored it. "Not because you have no money, but because you are stupid. You married a woman like Anna Sterling. She has family, breeding, and she gave you a genius son. And what happened? You destroyed everything for someone like me." She suddenly laughed. The laughter echoed through the empty living room, piercing enough to cause goosebumps. "Did you think I really loved you?" She tilted her head, staring at Andrew. "Andrew, you are in your 40s. You could not possibly have believed that, right?" Andrew's face completely cracked. Not from anger, but from realization. From the fact that in an instant he understood that all his decisions over the past 2 years, all his arrogance, all his sacrifices, all of it had been a lie. For Sarah, he neglected his wife. For Sarah, he fought with his son. For Sarah, he promoted her in the company, gave her money, resources. He thought she sincerely admired him, loved him, could not live without him. And she just said, "No, I was using you. You were using me." Andrew's voice was hoarse, almost inaudible. "I used you, so, what?" Sarah sneered. "Did you think you were so smart when you deceived Anna? Andrew, we are two of a kind. You are just funnier because you still consider yourself a victim." Silence hung in the living room for a few seconds. And then Andrew suddenly laughed. A low, hoarse laugh, like the scrape of sandpaper. There was some kind of insane self-irony in it. "Well said. Very well said," he nodded. The light in his eyes faded. "Sarah. These 2 years I have been a fool." He turned to the home bar, grabbed a bottle of whiskey, and took a swig straight from the bottle. "What else do you want to say?" Go ahead, let it all out tonight. Sarah apparently did not expect this reaction. She froze for a moment, but then the cold sneer returned to her face. I did not want to say it, but since you asked, I will. She pulled out a tissue, wiped the blood from her forehead. Her distorted facial expression gradually gave way to icy calm. Paul, my boyfriend. We have been together for 6 years. You were just an ATM to me. Andrew took another swig from the bottle. His Adam's apple bobbed. He did not answer. I asked Anna to help me get a job at the corporation back then because I knew she married a rich man. Sarah leaned against the armrest of the sofa, as if dropping all masks. And her tone even became light. The plan was simple. Get some money from you so Paul and I could afford a house by the beach and a small business. That is it. She sneered again. But you turned out to be so easy. I just praised you a couple of times, cried about my hard life, and you came running yourself. Gave me bags, cars, made me your personal assistant. Andrew, you know, every time you said nasty things to me about Anna, I was laughing inside. Laughing at what? Andrew asked dully. At your stupidity, Sarah said. A woman like your wife, any man would kill to have her, and you trampled her in the dirt for someone like me. Andrew slammed the bottle down on the bar counter. The glass hit the marble with a dull thud. And the poison? He asked. His voice suddenly became icy. You slipped her sleeping pills. Wanted to buy a slow-acting poison, so she would die slowly. Was that for the money too? Sarah's smile froze. You can answer that question at the precinct. A voice suddenly came from outside. The door swung open. 3 uniformed officers stood on the threshold. The senior officer flashed a badge. Sarah Jenkins, NYPD. You are under arrest on suspicion of attempting to procure controlled substances and attempted murder. Come with us. Blood instantly drained from Sarah's face. She spun toward Andrew. A final spark of hope flashed, but Andrew stood in place, gripping the bottle, and looked at her with an indifferent expression, like a bystander. Andy! Sarah shrieked. Help me. Tell them. Andrew did not move. You just said I am a loser, he said quietly. A loser cannot help you. Sarah's scream became hysterical. She tried to run out the back door, but 2 officers had already grabbed her arms. She thrashed, kicked, tears mixed with blood on her face, washing away the last remnants of her dignity. You cannot take me. It is him. He cheated on me. He did bad things too. Why are you not taking him? Adultery is a civil matter. The officer replied calmly. Purchasing poison is a felony. Sarah was dragged out the door. Her screams echoed through the night neighborhood for a few more seconds, and then were cut off by the sound of a squad car door slamming shut. Andrew was left alone in the living room. He stood by the bar, gripping the bottle, staring in the direction they had taken Sarah. Outside the panoramic window, the red and blue flashing lights of the police cruiser spun silently, painting the walls with scarlet spots. He suddenly hurled the bottle at the floor. Shards of glass and amber liquid flew everywhere. Then he slowly sank to the floor, leaning against the bar, and buried his face in his hands. His expression could not be seen on the camera, only his shoulders trembling slightly. Mom, do you want to keep watching? David asked. I looked away, leaned back in my seat, and closed my eyes. No. I said I would not. David turned off the tablet. The cabin grew quiet. The car drove smoothly down the empty road. Streetlights glided across the windows. A while later, David spoke up. Mom, do you feel sorry for him? I thought for a long time. No. You have to pay for your choices. David stayed silent, but reached out and covered my hand. His hand was large, with sharply defined knuckles. Already the hand of a grown man. But the way he held my hand was the same as in childhood. 5 fingers, slightly spread, covering my entire palm. As if saying, Mom, do not be afraid. Can we move into the new apartment tonight? I asked. We can. I had it cleaned in advance and prepared all the necessities. Your clothes are all new, in your size and style. And I ordered your favorite pillows from Paris. I finally opened my eyes and turned to him. You bought the apartment 3 months ago? Yes. And why were you so sure I would agree? David paused. I was not sure. He turned toward the window. I just thought that even if you did not need it, at least I prepared it just in case you ever did. So you would have an escape route. My nose stung. This kid, since he was 16, had carried everything on his own. He watched me endure, be humiliated, fade away in that house. He said nothing, just silently prepared everything every night, the evidence, the apartment, the agreements, the escape route. He is not my son. He is my guardian angel. Mom. David suddenly turned around. Up ahead is our new home. I looked where he was pointing. The car had already merged onto the west side highway. Ahead, at the end of the road, stood a sleek, silver residential tower. Warm yellow light glowed from the panoramic windows on the top floor. That light was on. Someone was waiting for us under that lamp. One page of a contract. The light in the new apartment was a warm yellow. Opening the door, I froze in the entryway. The living room was decorated in light gray tones. A panoramic window took up the entire wall. Outside lay the slowly flowing Hudson River and the city lights of New Jersey on the other side. The sofa was upholstered in the exact light beige fabric I loved. A bouquet of fresh estomas sat on the coffee table, water droplets still glistened on the petals. "Ma'am, you have arrived?" A familiar voice came from the kitchen. I turned and saw Martha in an apron. She held a steaming bowl of soup in her hands. "Martha, how are you here?" "Mr. David asked me to come." Martha placed the soup on the dining table. Her eyes were slightly red. "Said he was worried you would feel uncomfortable in a new place and asked me to take care of you." I looked at David. He was taking off his shoes by the door, his head lowered, pretending not to hear. "And also," Martha pointed to a glass cabinet in the corner of the living room. "Mr. David brought all your things over." I walked over and looked. Several items were neatly arranged in the cabinet. The emerald bracelet my grandmother passed down to me, a photo of my father, the hospital bracelet with David's newborn footprint, and my college journal. These were the things I left behind in the Vance mansion, not having time to grab them. Now they were all here. "When did you move them?" I asked David. "While you were at the gala," Martha hurried to answer. "Mr. David hired a moving company, and they brought all your personal belongings. He said that what is needed should be kept in that house, and everything else should be thrown away." "And Andrew?" "Mr. Vance was in his study upstairs, he did not know anything," Martha said, glancing at me cautiously. "Ma'am, the soup is still hot." I simmered it for 3 hours. I sat at the table and took the bowl. It was chicken herb soup. The very one I loved to drink after giving birth. Martha had remembered this for 18 years. David sat across from me, took out his phone, scrolled through something, and looked up. "Mom. Victor said we need to be at his office tomorrow morning at 9 to sign the final documents." "What documents?" "The confirmation of the share transfer, the notarization of the divorce settlement, and the final approval of the asset division." "My father already received the notice." "He will be there." "He has to be there," David said calmly. "The court order was served to him this afternoon. If he does not show up, the decision will be made in his absence." Outside the window, the river flowed slowly. The lights on the opposite bank flickered in the night. I ate the soup, feeling the warmth slowly spread through my body. It was quiet in this new home. There was no oppressive feeling like in the Vance mansion. No heavy footsteps of Andrew, no fake laughter of Sarah. Only the quiet running of water in the kitchen where Martha was washing dishes, and the low hum of the refrigerator. This was my own place. "Mom, get some rest." David stood up. "Tomorrow will be another hard day." I nodded. That night, I slept soundly. The mattress on the new bed was the perfect firmness. The pillow, the familiar height. The blanket smelled like sunshine. No nightmares, no sudden awakenings, no crushing sense of anxiety. I had not slept like this in a long time. The next morning, in the conference room of Victor Sullivan's law firm, sunlight streamed through the blinds, painting golden stripes on the floor. I sat at the head of the long table in that same black pantsuit. My hair was pulled into a bun. I wore no jewelry, only my lips were painted bright red. David sat next to me, a tablet and file folders in front of him. His face was calm as a statue. Andrew was 15 minutes late. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. In just one night, he had aged 10 years. Stubble covered his chin, his eyes were deeply sunken. His shirt collar was unbuttoned, his suit jacket wrinkled. His gaze swept the room and stopped on me. His lips moved, but he said nothing. A lawyer with a briefcase followed him, wearing a serious expression. "Mr. Vance, please have a seat." Victor Sullivan pointed to the chair opposite. Andrew sat down, his lawyer sat next to him. Silence hung in the room for a few seconds. "Today, we must execute 3 documents." Victor opened a folder. His voice was formal. "First, the order enforcing the prenuptial agreement. According to the contract drafted 20 years ago by attorney Richard Sterling and signed personally by Mr. Vance, the fact of marital infidelity has been established. 51% of the Vance Corporation shares automatically transfers to the ownership of Anna Sterling and David Sterling. Hold on, Andrew's lawyer raised his hand. The evidence of infidelity has already been submitted to the court, Victor interrupted, pulling a stack of papers from the folder. Photos, videos, hotel records, witness testimonies, and the complete text correspondence between Mr. Vance and Sarah Jenkins over the past 2 years. If your side has objections, you may state them in court, but based on the available evidence, the fact of infidelity is indisputable. Andrew's lawyer took the papers, flipped through a few pages. His face grew increasingly grim. He leaned over to Andrew and whispered something. Andrew's shoulders sank even lower. No objections, Andrew said hoarsely. Good. Victor turned the page. The second document. The divorce settlement agreement. Anna Sterling has already signed it. Now Mr. Vance's signature is required. The agreement includes the voluntary dissolution of the marriage, the absence of custody disputes over a son who has reached adulthood, and the division of joint property in accordance with the prenuptial agreement. Victor slid the bound document over to him. Andrew looked at the agreement. His fingers rested on the paper, his knuckles turning white. He did not pick up the pen, but looked up at me. Anna, he said. His voice was so hoarse it was barely audible. Can I speak with you in private? David leaned forward slightly. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Speak here, I said. Andrew looked at everyone present. His Adam's apple bobbed. The last 2 years. I was wrong, he finally said. The room grew so quiet that the ticking of the wall clock could be heard. I know these words come too late, he continued, looking right at me. But I want you to know. I truly did not know she wanted to poison you. You thought what? I asked. That I would quietly sign the divorce papers and give you my blessing? Andrew opened his mouth, but could not utter a word. You thought Sarah was tender and caring. And I was just difficult. You thought she loved you to distraction, and I just did not want to step aside. You thought she was the victim, and I was the villain. My voice was calm, as if I were stating the facts of someone else's case. Andrew, your biggest mistake is not that you cheated, but that you never realized how stupid you are. Andrew's face flushed, as if from a slap. Sign it, I said. He lowered his head, picked up the pen. His fingers trembled. The tip of the pen hovered over the paper for a long time, but eventually he signed it. Andrew Vance. 3 crooked, slanted words, like a suicide note written on the edge of an abyss. The third document. Victor Sullivan, giving him no time to breathe, slid another stack of papers over. The application to register the transfer of corporate shares. Mr. Vance must sign in the transferring party section. Andrew looked at the document and suddenly laughed. A dry, helpless laugh. Like the rustle of autumn leaves. My father passed this company down to me, he said. My grandfather invested in this company, David interjected coldly. Andrew looked up at his son. Complex emotions fought in his eyes. Dave, did you ever even consider me your father? David remained silent for 3 seconds. When I was 8, I won first place in the state math Olympiad. You promised to take me to the amusement park. I waited by the door for 3 hours in my new shoes. His voice was flat. You did not come because Sarah said she was in a bad mood, and you took her to a restaurant. Andrew froze. When I was 10, Mom had a high fever. I called you 12 times. You did not answer. Later you posted a photo in the corporate chat. You and Sarah, skiing in Aspen. Andrew's lips began to tremble. When I was 13, Grandfather died. You were 2 hours late to the funeral. Said your flight was delayed, but I checked the flight logs. You did not fly anywhere that day. You were celebrating Sarah's birthday. David stood up, rested his hands on the table, and looked down at his father. You ask if I ever considered you my father? His voice remained calm, but every word was forged like steel. And I ask you, did you ever consider yourself a father? Andrew's face lost all color. His lawyer next to him wiped sweat from his brow. Victor Sullivan lowered his head, shuffling documents. The sunlight from the window cast David's shadow very long across the floor. Andrew said nothing more. He took the pen and signed the share transfer document. The pen dropped onto the table with a soft clatter. He stood up, stumbled, and only caught his balance by leaning on the table. His lawyer rushed to help him, but he pushed him away. I will go, he said. His voice sounded far away. Anna, I am sorry. He walked toward the door slowly. His shoes thumped dully against the floor. At the door, he stopped. My accounts are frozen. The mansion is seized. I spent last night in my car, he said. Can I? You cannot, David cut him off. All your assets are marital property. Now they fully belong to my mother." Andrew said nothing more. He opened the door and walked out. The sound of his retreating footsteps echoed from the hallway, followed by the ding of the elevator doors opening and closing. It was quiet in the room for a long time. "All documents are signed," Victor Sullivan said quietly. "Anna, as of today, 51% of the corporation's shares belong to you and your son. Transfer it all to David," I said. "What?" I turned to David. "This is the Vance legacy. I do not need it. But you are different. The blood of both the Sterlings and the Vances flows in your veins. You have the ability, and you have the right." David froze, then shook his head. "Mom, you cannot do that. I decide what I can or cannot do." I stood up and smoothed my blazer. "I do not need shares. I need freedom." David looked at me. Something flashed in his eyes. He took a deep breath and argued no more. "All right," he said. "Then I have a gift for you." He pulled out his phone, played a video, and turned the screen to me. On the screen was a press conference. Cameras were pointed at a podium. A person in an orange jumpsuit with short hair was standing there. The camera zoomed in. It was Sarah. To her left was a handsome young man in handcuffs. To her right, a middle-aged man with rough features. "Last night the police executed a raid. Sarah Jenkins, Paul, and that dealer with the illegal substances are all under arrest. The confiscated poisons, correspondence, bank transfers, all of it has been handed over to the DA." On the video, Sarah was being led out of a building. Camera flashes popped. She desperately hid her face, but even so, her pathetic and terrified state was obvious. Minimum of 10 years. Paul, as an accomplice, will not get off either. I stopped the video and handed the phone back to David. Sunlight flooded the room. The air suddenly felt very clean. "Let us go," I said. "Where to?" David asked. "Home." I stood up and took his arm. "To our new home." Coronation of the Queen, 3 months later. The oak trees along the Hudson River had already changed their leaves. Soft green leaves swayed quietly in the summer breeze. I stood by the panoramic window and watched a cruise ship slowly sailing down the river. The lights on its deck flickered in the twilight like a string of pearls. "Miss Sterling, it is time." My assistant, Helen, stood at the door with a folder in her hands. "The unveiling of the new car begins at 7. All media representatives are already here." I turned away from the window, adjusted my collar in the mirror. Today, I was wearing a white pantsuit. On my lapel was an emerald brooch. I had it remade from my grandmother's bracelet. A bracelet was easy to damage, but a brooch could be worn every day. "Let us go," I said. Helen followed me, briefing me as we walked. "There will be 32 media outlets today. The local news network will be broadcasting live. Mr. David said he will arrive straight from campus around 6:40. Is he driving himself?" "Yes. Mr. David got his driver's license last month," Helen smiled. "He bought a black Maybach. Said that for his first time behind the wheel, he wants to take you for a spin." I smiled too. 3 months. Not that long, but not that short either. Enough for a person to completely change. Too short for some memories to fade. But at least now, stepping out of my apartment doors and getting into the new white Bentley, I felt not exhaustion, but a long-forgotten lightness. The launch event was held in the banquet hall on the top floor of the Vance Corporation headquarters. Rather, it was no longer called that. A month ago, at an emergency board meeting, David was unanimously elected as the new chairman. He officially renamed the company Sterling Holdings, in honor of his last name and my maiden name. Andrew did not attend that meeting. He submitted his resignation through his lawyer. It was just 2 lines. "For personal reasons, I resign from all my positions at the corporation." Even his signature was crooked. I had not seen him since. Victor mentioned once that Andrew moved into a rented apartment on the outskirts of Queens and was barely making ends meet consulting for small businesses. All his assets had been divided as joint marital property, including that mansion. On the day the mansion went up for auction, David had it bought back, and then donated it to the city's orphanage system. They opened a rehabilitation center for autistic children there. "Miss Sterling, we have arrived." The voice of the driver, Sam, pulled me from my thoughts. The car stopped at the entrance of Sterling Holdings. The building was the same, but the logo over the entrance had changed. The new letters, SH, glowed in the twilight with a silver light. When I stepped out of the car, camera flashes exploded. Reporters were kept back by security on both sides of the red carpet. Long lenses were aimed at me. "Miss Sterling, look over here." "Miss Sterling, is it true that you personally oversaw the development of the new electric vehicle model? Miss. Sterling, rumor has it you bought out Mr. Vance's last subsidiary. Is that true? Miss Sterling, the Sarah Jenkins case goes to trial next week. Will you be testifying? I did not answer a single question. Just smiled politely and nodded as I walked into the building. The elevator went up to the top floor. David was already waiting at the doors. He wore a navy blue suit with that same dark red tie I had given him. His hair was slicked back. Over 3 months, his features had become even more masculine. He stood there without any teenage awkwardness. There was confidence and sharp strength in his posture, but when he smiled, it was still that same boy I knew. Mom, he offered his arm. You look wonderful tonight. And you look very handsome tonight. I took his arm. How are things at the university? Aced my finals. And today, an acceptance letter came from Harvard. I stopped and looked at him. You got into Harvard? Yes. David rubbed his nose. Wanted to tell you after the presentation. When you were applying last fall, he said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Back then, I was still dealing with legal cases. Took the SATs in between, wrote my application essays. Did not tell you because I was not sure I would get in. I looked at him and did not know what to say. Last fall, right in the middle of his master plan, studying by day, gathering evidence by night, meeting with Victor Sullivan on weekends. Plus crashing the stock and orchestrating a corporate takeover. And amidst all that, he managed to get into Harvard. You are crazy, I said. Maybe a little, David smiled. But, Mom, I am not going to go. Why? Because right now I have things more important than school. He looked at the crowded hall. Sterling Holdings is just starting out. I need to get it on its feet. That is my responsibility and I looked at David. Something shone in his eyes. He opened his mouth, but ended up just squeezing my hand tighter. Let us go, Mom. The presentation is starting. The launch was a huge success. On stage, under the spotlights, the new electric car slowly rotated. Its sleek body reflected the bright light. I stood on stage and gave my speech. Hundreds of guests sat in the audience. Thank you all for coming tonight to the launch of Sterling Holdings' new vehicle. My voice carried across the hall. This car is our first product. Its project name is Renaissance. The audience applauded. Why Renaissance? I looked at the faces in the crowd. My gaze lingered on David for a moment. Because Sterling Holdings is also a renaissance. 3 months ago, this company bore a different name. 3 months later, it has a new name, a new direction, a new team. And our first car carries one simple message. I clicked the remote. 2 words appeared on the large screen. Forward, to the future. Look forward, move forward. No matter what happened in the past, no matter how hard it was, as long as you have the courage to stand up, you can always reach a new destination. Thunderous applause erupted. When I stepped off the stage, David was already waiting for me. He handed me a bottle of water and quietly said, Mom, you spoke better than what I wrote. You rewrote that speech 3 times yesterday, he smiled. I did not expect you to change it on the fly. I just added my own touch, which is why it turned out well. Sincerity moves people more than pretty words. After the presentation, there was a reception. Champagne glass in hand, I mingled with the guests. Some congratulated me on the launch of the new company, some praised the car's design, some cautiously asked about Andrew's fate. I answered everything politely and evasively. My smile was flawless, my tone measured. Over 3 months, I had learned a lot. At 9:30, the reception came to an end. Having seen off the last guests, I stepped out onto the terrace for some fresh air. The wind was warm and humid. The city lights in the distance stretched out like a golden ocean. Mom. David stepped out after me, holding his phone. Nick just texted. He says the verdict was handed down in Sarah's case. How much time? 12 years. Paul got 8. The drug dealer got life. I nodded, saying nothing. Over the past 3 months, the name Sarah had turned from a splinter in my heart into an unimportant memory. I no longer hated her. Hate takes too much energy, and I had more important things to do. And one more thing. David turned the phone toward me. Nick said my father was at the courthouse today. I froze. What was he doing there? Unknown. David put the phone away. Nick said he sat in the back row, dressed very simply, and has lost a lot of weight. After the verdict was read, he left without speaking to anyone. I watched the river in the distance in silence. The name Andrew was once the most important part of my life. It made me laugh, cry, toss, and turn sleeplessly at night. But now, when someone said it, I felt only a light indifference. Akin to reading an old newspaper. It is all in the past. Let us go home. When we left the building, the streets were already quiet. Sam brought the car around. David opened the door for me. At the exact moment the car pulled away, I saw a person. Across the street, under a streetlight, stood a man in a gray jacket. He was very thin, his hair cut short, with gray at the temples. In his hands, he held a plastic bag with a few takeout containers. It was Andrew. He was looking across the street at our car, at David and me in the window. The streetlight cast his long, thin shadow. His lips moved. He seemed to say something. From this distance, I could not hear, but I could read his lips. He said, "I am sorry." The car did not stop. David did not even look in that direction. He just reached out and covered my hand. "Mom. Tomorrow, I am taking you for a ride," he said. "New license, new car. We will drive down the West Side Highway." I looked away, looked at his profile, and smiled. Okay. The car merged into the city traffic. In the rearview mirror, the gray figure grew smaller and smaller until it dissolved into the night lights of the city. 3 months ago, I lost my marriage. A relationship I thought would last a lifetime. 3 months later, I had my own company, a son who protects me, and a new beginning. I carefully slipped my hand out of David's grasp and adjusted the emerald brooch. In the dim light of the cabin, it gleamed softly, like a frozen drop of green starlight. "Mom," David said suddenly. "The day after tomorrow is the business forum. The organizers want you to give a keynote speech." "What is the topic?" "Women in business." In the invitation, they wrote, "We kindly ask Miss Anna Sterling to share her story of how she rebuilt her life from scratch." I smiled. "Tell them I will be there." The car drove forward along the river. Outside the window was the endless flow of the water and the lights on the opposite bank. This city was the same as it was 3 months ago. But I was no longer the same as I was 3 months ago. Not Mrs. Vance, nor anyone's ex-wife. I am Anna Sterling.